Hey guys, I'm Mr. Hark. Today's story is about a team of 5 cryptozoologists who spent 6 months deep in the Olympic Peninsula, running experiments, recording strange sounds, tracking massive footprints in known Bigfoot hotspots. And then, they discovered something so shocking, they never published a single page. No photos, no press conference, nothing. They buried their evidence, and they buried something else. That's what you're about to hear. So now, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this with anyone who loves Bigfoot stories. All right, let's begin. I'm going to tell you something I am not supposed to say out loud. If the others are still alive, they would hate me for this. We promised, all 5 of us, that we would never talk. Not to our families, not to journalists, not even to each other after that last night. But I am getting older. I do not sleep much, and every time it rains, every time I hear a truck on a wet road, I'm right back there. So here it is. In the winter of 1998 in the Olympic Peninsula, we wrapped it in a tarp behind my cabin. We dug the hole ourselves. We put it in the ground like it was a person. Because it was. That is the part people struggle with. They want it to be a monster, or some missing link, or something from a campfire story. They want claws and glowing red eyes. They want a clean category. I am telling you, it was a kid. And I am the one who found him on the road. I should tell you who I am, so you can decide if you believe anything that comes out of my mouth. My name is Marcus. Back then, I was in my early 40s. I taught survival for a living. Corporations, weekend warriors, sometimes search and rescue groups who needed someone to yell at their new guys. Before that, I did a little bit of everything, some military, some logging, some guiding. Mostly, I just stayed in the woods because that is where I was comfortable. My family had some land out there, timber parcels and old hunting cabins off the logging roads. I ended up with a few of the cabins when everyone else moved to town. I fixed up the biggest one and used it as a base for my classes. No phone line, no neighbors, generator if you wanted light. I did not go into those woods as a believer. I left them with a secret I have been carrying for more than 20 years. We went up in November. There were 5 of us in the truck. Me driving, then Lena, Suri, Robin, and Elias crammed in with gear stacked around them. You could not see out the back window because of all the cases and boxes. We had audio equipment, camera traps, casting material, field kits, notebooks, everything you would bring if you were serious about more than campfire stories. I remember the rain that day. You hear people joke about the Pacific Northwest and rain. The Olympic Peninsula is different. It does not just fall. It is like the air itself is wet. It gets into your clothes. The wipers never quite catch up. We left the last tiny town, hit the state highway, and then turned off onto the logging road. The trees closed in almost right away. Big dark firs and cedars leaning over the road, branches slapping the side of the truck. I knew every bend on that road. I had been riding it since I was a kid. But even I felt something when we crossed past the last gate. A line. Past that point, if something went wrong, it was a long way back to help. Looks like the middle of nowhere, Robin said, looking out through the fogged-up glass. That's the point, I told her. Elias gave this little grunt like a laugh without sound. He was pressed up against a stack of coolers, cap pulled down low, gray beard damp from his breath. Middle of nowhere is crowded, he said. You just can't see who else is out here. He had that way of talking that made simple things sound heavy. Old mountain guy thing. Lena was quiet. She usually was. She had a folder on her lap, sighting reports printed and hole punched. Every once in a while we would hit a bump and a few pages would slide askew and she would straighten them again like it bothered her. Suri kept one hand hooked around the handle above the window, steadying herself, the other hand resting on a metal case of sample tubes like it was something fragile. She caught my eye in the rear view and gave me this quick smile, the kind you give before a test you actually studied for. I still remember thinking, this is overkill. We are going to hike around in the rain, hear a few weird animal calls, get some muddy boot prints, and everyone will go home with stories and no proof, same as all the other expeditions. I'd seen a few weird things up there over the years. Footfalls around camp that were too heavy for deer. Rocks hitting the ground near the fire without any slope above to send them rolling. One time a shape stepped across the trail ahead of me in 2 strides, just a darker patch in the dark. I told myself it was out. It was easier that way. I did not bring those stories up in the truck. This was supposed to be their show. The cabin is about 5 miles off the pavement. The last mile is the worst. The road splits into all these old spurs and dead ends where the loggers used to turn their rigs around. If you do not know the right one, you can drive in circles for hours. The place itself is simple. One story with a loft. Tin roof, big covered porch, heavy door that swells in the rain. There is a wood stove in the main room, a little kitchen area, 2 small bedrooms, and a ladder up to the loft where you sleep if you do not mind the heat. There is a shed for the generator, another shed for tools and junk. No neighbors. No lights on the horizon at night. When I cut the engine that first day, everybody just sat for a second. You know that moment when the noise stops and you realize how loud it actually was? The rain and the tires and the wipers. And then it is just thick quiet. Not silent but layered. Drips. A crow somewhere. Distant water. Robin was the first to say anything. This is, yeah. Okay, this is creepy as hell. Good creepy, I said. Productive creepy. We hauled gear for an hour, cases inside, boxes stacked under the eaves, fuel cans by the generator shed. By dark, we had a fire going in the stove, coats hanging from every nail, steam rising from boots lined up near the hearth. The windows were just black rectangles with rain sliding down them. Elias poured himself coffee that looked like it could clean engine parts. He sat at the table with a map. "We start here," he said, putting his finger on a spot near one of the creeks. "Old logging landing. Lots of edge cover. Elk use it." Lena spread her papers out next to him, red circles marking past reports. "There's overlap with 1979, 1983, and 92 here," she said. "Visuals, tracks, vocalizations. Mostly late fall, early winter." Robin was already unwrapping cables. "Audio first," she said. "You can fake tracks. You can misjudge distance on a sighting. Harder to fake responses." Suri opened her metal case. Tubes, tweezers, little sterile swabs. "If we work in pairs, we can collect and document anything we find in real time," she said. Chain of custody. No mystery hair found in a drawer 10 years later. I stoked the fire and watched them work. This was not a bunch of drunk campers with a tape recorder. These were serious people. Some part of me softened right there and thought, maybe, just maybe, we might actually catch something unusual. Not what we did catch. I did not have that imagination yet. The first week felt like any other backcountry trip. We checked the roads, picked our routes. We got soaked, dried out, then got soaked again. We hiked until our calves burned, came back to the cabin and fell asleep in our clothes. The usual. At night, we set out audio recorders in a loose circle around the place. Robin showed me how she did it. "You want a mix," she said. "Open areas, dense understory, near water, far from water. The forest doesn't sound the same everywhere." I teased her about being able to hear the difference between one tree and another, and she just shrugged. "You'll hear it," she said. "If there's anything to hear, most of what we got at first was rain, wind, branches. The little high voices of owls, coyotes, some elk bugles way off. It is weird listening to hours of that in the cabin, with everything dark outside and the tape hiss going like breathing. The first thing that made me sit up was not a howl. It was a knock. 2 knocks, actually. We were all at the table. It was late, maybe 11. The stove had burned down to a low orange. Everyone else was half dozing while Robin fast-forwarded through boring stretches, stopping now and then for a note. On the midnight tape from the recorder up behind the cabin, there was rain, a little bit of distant stream, and then, clear as if someone was in the trees with a baseball bat, 3 sharp knocks, wood on wood. A pause. Then 2 more, a little further away. Robin stopped the tape and rewound it a few seconds, played it again. No one talked the second time. We just listened. 3 knocks. Pause. 2. "That's not a branch breaking," Elias said finally. "That's deliberate." "Humans?" Lena asked. "Another cabin up there?" I shook my head. "Nothing up that way for miles," I said. "You'd have seen lights on the way in." "It's not logging," Elias added. "No active cuts up here now." "Not in this weather." Robin looked at me. "Have you ever heard that up here before?" she asked. I thought about all the nights I'd slept in that cabin. The rain, the elk, the odd stuff you chalk up to imagination. A few times I'd heard something like that, yeah, sharp, hollow sounds. But I had never given it words. Maybe once or twice, I said slowly. I didn't record it. We went back out the next day and checked for signs. The spot where that recorder had been was on a little rise behind the cabin, overlooking a game trail. There were a lot of old boot prints from us, deer tracks, some bear. Nothing clear. Could have been a branch, I said, even though I knew it didn't sound like one. Sure, Robin said softly. Could have been. She moved the recorder a little further into the trees. If it was someone messing with us, she said, they're going to get bored real quick being out here every night. If it keeps happening, it's not a prank. That was how this whole thing went. One strange thing, then another. Always just enough doubt that you could walk away if you wanted to. Tell yourself it was nothing. We didn't walk away. The tracks showed up the second week. We had had a cold snap. The rain turned to this wet snow for a day, just enough to slush over the ground. The next morning part of it had melted, but in the shaded spots you still had patches of white with outlines in them. Elias found them. Of course he did. Marcus, he called, not loud, just enough for his voice to carry down the draw. Up here. I climbed up from the creek bed to where he was standing. He did not move until I was next to him. Once I saw them, I understood why. They were in a line along the edge of a little clearing. Big prints, longer than my boot by, I would say, a third. Barefoot. 5 toes. You could see the impression of the ball, the heel, the way the weight had rolled off. No shoe tread, no boot heel. The stride was wide, too wide for me to copy without stretching, and I am not a small man. The snow had melted around the edges, made them soft, but they were still clear. Whoever or whatever had walked there had done it sometime in the night. This is it, Elias said quietly. His face changed when he looked at them. I had seen him excited about sign before, but this was something else. A kind of satisfaction. Like a man who had been telling the same story for 30 years and finally had someone standing next to him saying, I see it too. Lena came up with the casting kit. She knelt down and took measurements, murmuring numbers. Length, width, step distance. She photographed them from every angle. Could be hoax, she said. Out of habit, I think. A big guy with fake feet. In the dark, I said, on this slope, in that snow, in the middle of nowhere, without leaving any other prints. She didn't answer. Her jaw went tight. We cast 2 of the best ones, poured the plaster, waited in the cold until it set, then pried them out of the ground like lifting something's face off. I held one in my hands. It was heavy. You could feel the weight that had made the impression, the depth. It was not just big, it was deep. Something heavy had walked there. I remember looking up at the tree line on the other side of the clearing. The forest felt closer, not in a mystical way. Just the awareness that whatever had made those prints could be standing in that wall of trees, looking back, and you would not see it. That night, no one joked around the table. The sounds escalated after that, knocks more often, sometimes answering when we made noise ourselves. One night I stepped out to take a leak and whistled the first line of some stupid song under my breath. Nothing special, just something to fill the silence. 4 notes. A few seconds later, from down the slope behind the cabin, those same 4 notes, off by a step or 2 but close enough that my teeth went cold. Not an echo, not a bird, not wind. I stood there, zipper half up, heart pounding. Robin, I called, a little too sharp. She came out onto the porch, rubbing her eyes, shoulders hunched against the cold. What? You hear that? We waited. Nothing. Just the usual drip and some distant owl. I heard something copy me, I said. I felt stupid as soon as I said it. Like a kid describing a ghost. She didn't laugh. What did it sound like, she asked. I whistled the 4 notes again. She frowned, listening. You sure it wasn't echo off the cabin? Positive, I said. Came from down there, I pointed. We waited again. Nothing. She set up an extra recorder behind the cabin that night. When we played it back the next day, those 4 notes were there. Twice. Mine, then the second set. You could hear the rain hitting the mic, this little hiss over everything, but the whistles cut through. The second set was wrong. Like a mouth that was not made for that shape trying to copy it. A little warble at the end. If you want to know the moment I stopped being able to explain things away, that was probably it. Footprints, sure, hoaxes exist. Knocks. You can tell yourself it's trees snapping. But that sound, that attempt, that was someone on the other side, Robin sat very still while we listened. That's not any recorded sound we played. It's trying, I said. My own voice sounded strange to me, hearing the fear in it. That's what scares me, she said. Trying means learning. You have to understand something about that winter. It was not all knocks and whistles. Most days were boring. Data logging. Hiking until your socks had no dry parts left. Eating canned chili and instant coffee, arguing about nothing. If it had been constant madness, I think we would have broken earlier. The slow drip is worse. You settle, you adjust. The weird becomes the background until the next line is crossed. Suri got her first hair sample in December. We had left a little bit of fruit on a stump near one of the game trails. Not as bait exactly, more like a marker. Something that would tell us if anything curious besides raccoons was passing by. Next morning, most of it was gone. Not chewed, not scattered, just gone. The ground around the stump was a mess of tracks, but mostly deer and small stuff. 20 feet away, caught on a broken branch at about chest height, there was a tuft of hair. Dark, coarse, a little longer than my fingers. Suri bagged it like evidence in a crime scene. Gloves, sterilized tweezers, labels. She was so focused, she barely spoke. We sent that and a few other bits out with a friend of hers in town who drove into the city every few days. The samples went to a lab under some vague description, contaminated primate samples or something like that. Suri knew how to word it, so no one paid too much attention. Then we waited. Christmas came and went. New Year's. In the cabin, those dates did not mean much. The days blurred. We kept our own time by what we heard and found. The first real lab report came back in January. Suri spread the pages out on the table, hands shaking just a little. "It's not bear," she said. That was the first thing out of her mouth. Not bear. Not human. They matched it against everything in their database. Closest alignment is primate, but it's not a known sample. And the structure, she tapped a line of jargon, it's specialized for insulation and moisture. Lena leaned over her shoulder reading. Her lips moved as she took in the numbers. "So it's contaminated," I said, out of habit. "Mixed with something." Suri shook her head. "No. That's the thing. The markers are consistent. This isn't two things in one sample. It's one organism that shares some genes with us and some with nothing they have on file. Could still be a lab screw-up," I said. I could hear myself reaching for the exit. "Yeah," she said. "It could. That's why we send more." We did. We sent hair. We sent swabs from a half-eaten elk carcass that had been opened in a way none of us had seen before. Ribs pried apart like a box. We sent a little bit of tissue from a scratch on a tree where there was dried blood too high for a deer and too low for a bear. The more they looked, the stranger it got. The part that really scared me was not the unknown, though. It was the known. There were markers in there that tied back to us. Not close enough to call it human, not from a forensic standpoint, but close enough that if you were being honest with yourself, you had to admit you were not dealing with a totally separate animal. "They're us," Suri said one night quietly, like it hurt to say. "Not us, but close, cousins. That's the only word I have." "You're going to need more than a cousin to convince anybody," Lena said. Her voice was tight. "Extraordinary claims, extraordinary evidence." "We're not publishing this," I said before I even knew I was going to say it. They both looked at me. "We're not at that point yet," I added. "We don't even know what we're dealing with. The last thing I want is a bunch of yahoos with guns up here because someone heard the word relic hominin on the news." "We don't have to say where," Lena said. "Doesn't matter," I snapped. "You put it out there, somebody will figure it out. Or the government will, or some company. Whoever it is, they won't come out here with notebooks. They'll come with helicopters." There was a long pause. Outside, the generator coughed and sputtered. "We don't even know what we want yet," Robin said from the doorway. I hadn't realized she was listening. She came in, hugging her arms. "Are we trying to prove they exist, or are we trying to meet them?" "Both," Elias said. He was in the corner, whittling something by the stove. "That's the problem. And it was only going to get worse. The first time I saw the juvenile, I thought I was having a stroke. It was late January. We had had one of those freak-clear nights where the temperature drops fast after sundown. The trees creak. Your breath feels sharp in your chest. I went out alone, which I know sounds stupid now, but at the time it felt safer. Less noise, less chance of stepping on a branch and scaring whatever was out there back into the dark. I told the others I was just taking a walk to check the perimeter. I had a flashlight, but I kept it off. Once your eyes adjust in that kind of forest, you get this grayscale where you can see outlines. The snow patches glowed a little. The trunks were darker shadows. I walked the same ridge I'd been checking for weeks. Same route, same pace. I whistled those 4 notes again without really thinking about it. Habit. They answered from the trees ahead of me. Not behind, not off to the side. Ahead. Closer than before. My chest went tight. I stopped. Every instinct I had as a survival teacher said turn around, go back to the cabin, tell the others. But I stayed where I was, breathing little cloud puffs. I know you're there, I said. My voice sounded too loud in the cold air. I won't hurt you. Nothing for a long moment. Then I heard footsteps, coming toward me, slow, heavy, but placing carefully. Not crashing like a bear. More like a person who knows how to move in the woods. I did not turn on the light. I knew if I did and it was a person, I'd feel stupid. And if it was not a person, I might never see it twice. A shape separated itself from the darker shapes. Lower than I expected. Not as tall as the figures I'd glimpsed before. Maybe my height, maybe a little shorter, but bulkier, thicker through the shoulders. Hard to say. It stopped just outside the little circle of paler ground where the snow was. I could make out an outline of a head, long arms. The breath I saw puffing from it was slower than mine. Controlled. It whistled the 4 notes again, closer this time to the right pitch. Yeah, I said, because my brain had nothing else. That's it. I lifted my hands slowly, palm out. I could feel the hairs on my arms stand up, not from cold, from, I don't know, some kind of animal recognition. Another self out there. Something shifted that I think was its head. I got the impression it was looking at my hand, then at my face. I had an apple in my pocket. I don't know why, but I took it out and set it on the ground between us, then stepped back a few steps. Take it, I said. If you want. Another long pause. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, the distant river. A branch creaked somewhere above us. Then it moved. I saw more. Dark hair all over, not shaggy like a bear. Longer arms than a person. Legs thick like tree trunks. No clothes. Clearly bipedal, but not human. The proportions were wrong. Head a bit more forward. But the way it looked down at the apple, then up at me, that part was too familiar. It picked up the apple with one hand. The fingers wrapped around it. The hand was big, but not adult big, if that makes sense. I knew kids' hands. There was something in the way it held the fruit, hesitation, curiosity. It brought it to its nose first, sniffed, then it bit in. The crunch sounded almost comically normal. That sound broke something in me. It was a living thing, standing there in the cold, eating an apple I had handed it. I exhaled slowly. You're okay, I said. You're okay. It chewed, watching me. Its eyes caught what little light there was and reflected faintly, like cat eyes, but not as bright. More like a deer's, but forward-facing. We stood like that for maybe 10 seconds. Then there was a knock from deeper in the trees, a single sharp crack. The juvenile's head snapped up. It turned, made a soft sound I couldn't place, like a cross between a hum and a chirp, and then it was gone. 3 steps, and it melted into the dark. I heard it moving for a bit, then nothing. I did not tell the others everything when I got back. I told them I had heard movement. I told them something took the apple. I left out the way it had washed my face, the way it had replied to my whistle. I don't know why I kept that to myself. Maybe I was afraid they would start treating it like a lab animal. Maybe I wanted something that was just mine. That is the part I am least proud of when I look back. You can't keep something like that secret forever, though. Not in a cabin that size. The visits became more regular. Not every night. Not on the worst weather, when the wind howled and branches came down. But often enough that I started to feel its absence like a missing chair at the table. I would walk the same route at dusk or just after dark, whistling, talking in a low voice. Sometimes it would come within sight. Sometimes I would only hear it, pacing parallel to me in the trees. Once or twice it threw a small rock that landed near my feet, not in an aggressive way, more like a test. Like it had seen someone else do it and was copying, not completely understanding why. I started bringing small things. An apple, a handful of nuts, once a shiny metal bottle cap. It seemed to like the crunchy stuff. The bottle cap it picked up and turned over between its fingers, then dropped. No use for that. Up close, you notice details you don't forget. The hair was not one uniform color. There were lighter strands mixed in, thicker at the shoulders, thinner on the chest and face. The skin I saw on its hands and face was darker than mine, thick but not rough like a calloused human hand. It moved with this controlled strength, every step placed, no wasted motion. One time it copied my walk. I had stopped and shifted my weight from one foot to the other, trying to get a better look without spooking it. It did the same thing, exaggerated, like a child repeating a gesture. I laughed, nervous, and then stopped when I heard myself. The sound didn't belong out there. It never made a full human word in front of me, but sometimes it would echo the rhythm of my speech under its breath, not the exact sounds, just the pattern. Murmur, murmur, pause, murmur, like it was rehearsing. Of course, I wasn't the only one leaving the cabin. The others started to notice things too. Robin found a set of small prints near one of her recorders. Not as big as the ones by the clearing. Same shape, same proportions, just smaller. She came back, brow furrowed. "There's a younger one," she said. Or a female, I can't tell. But something with shorter stride is following our routes. Lena got more and more detailed lab reports that convinced her this was not just random contamination. Elias heard calls at night that he swore were different from the deeper, chesty sounds he associated with adults. Higher, more variable. "So something young is watching us," Lena said one evening. "We need to be careful what we teach it." "What do you mean teach it?" I asked. She looked at me like I had said something naive. "You don't think patterning your movements and leaving food in the same place every night is teaching," she said. "We are conditioning it. That's what experiments do." She wasn't wrong. That was the other line. We had gone from observers to participants. You can argue about whether we crossed it deliberately or gradually. The effect was the same. I told myself we were building trust. If they were people, or close to it, they deserved a contact that wasn't a bullet or a trap. If we could show them we weren't all hunters and loggers, maybe that meant something. Back then, that sounded noble in my head. Now it just sounds like arrogance. The shocking stuff, the real science, came later. Surrey got tissue that behaved in ways it shouldn't. Small samples, nothing anyone would miss from a living creature. Bits caught on bark, dried blood from a scratch. Under the scope, under certain tests, the cells didn't die as fast as they should have. They repaired damage faster. Then there was the cold. We found prints in fresh snow one morning, way up on a ridge where the wind cut straight through your layers. Barefoot, deep, clean impressions. No sign of frostbite on the edges when we saw one of them again later, overlapping an older track with no limp. Surrey started building this picture of something that could slow itself down in the cold, like slipping into a lower gear, staying just this side of hypothermia. It scared me, not the specifics, but the implication. These weren't things barely scraping by. They were built for this place. They moved through it like we move through a grocery store. They saw things we didn't. Heat, for one. The camera traps kept getting dodged. We would set them on trails, at choke points, at clearings. Places where any animal that weighed that much and walked on two legs would eventually pass. We got deer, bears, once a cougar tail. But when we matched the timestamps with audio or tracks, the big guys always seemed to skim the edge of the frame, just out of range, or behind some obstacle. It could have been luck, at first, but after enough coincidences, it starts to feel like something else. One night we got a partial shot, just the side of a face, blurred hair, an eye reflecting the flash oddly, not like a red-eye effect. It was looking straight at the camera from too close, like it had leaned in to inspect it. "We are not the only ones studying," Elias said, holding the print in his hands. "They know this isn't part of the landscape." "You sound like you think they're smarter than we are," I said. It came out more defensive than I meant. "Out here," he said, "they are." He wasn't impressed by our maps. He had his own, in his head, decades deep. And in his mental map, we weren't on top. By March, the cabin felt different. Same physical space, same stove, same creaky boards, same damp smell. What changed was the way we filled it, the way we talked or didn't talk. At the beginning, we had told each other everything. Who heard what? Who saw which shadow? Who almost slipped in the creek and nearly froze his nuts off? It was a shared adventure. Then personal lines started. Private notes. Late nights with the door to one of the bedrooms closed while Lena and Suri pored over data without the rest of us. My own walks I didn't fully describe. The others' little solo missions. Trust didn't disappear. It just stretched thin, like a rope with too many loads hanging off it. The arguments were never yelling matches. We were too tired for that. They were low, tense conversations over coffee that went cold. "What's the end game here?" Robin asked one night. Everyone was there. The rain outside was pounding so hard on the roof, we had to speak louder to hear each other. "Publish," Lena said, without missing a beat. "Properly. With chain of custody, with lab verification, with location anonymized as much as we can." "And then what?" I asked. I had been waiting for that word. "Then the scientific community has to acknowledge." "And then what?" I repeated. "For them. For the ones out there." Silence. "They'll be hunted," Elias said. He was staring at the stove window, little orange light on his face. "They'll be tranquilized, tagged, radio collared. Their kids taken. Or they'll just get shot. People don't like their stories messed with." "That's not a reason to bury the truth," Lena said. "We can't make decisions for the entire world based on what-ifs. Do you know how many extinct species we might have saved if someone had gotten proof earlier?" "This isn't a fish," I said. "This is a cousin," like Suri said. "A relative. You want to call CNN and tell them we're dissecting your uncle?" Suri rubbed her eyes. "We're not dissecting anything," she said. "All we have are trace samples. And what we're seeing is, yes, it's huge. But if that knowledge comes at the price of killing them off," she trailed off. Robin spoke quietly. "He trusts us," she said. Everyone looked at her. "He?" Lena asked. "Who's he?" "The young one," Robin said. "Whoever he is. He follows your routes, Marcus. He comes to the edges of our camp sometimes. He took food from me last week when I was alone by the creek." My stomach dropped. "You didn't tell me that," I said. "You didn't tell us about your nightly trail walks until we noticed," she said back, not angry, just stating it. "This isn't just a data set anymore. There is a someone out there who thinks of us as something other than a threat. If we drag him into the middle of a media circus," her voice cracked. She shut her mouth. "Nobody won that argument. We just let it hang, like steam over a pot fogging the windows." Looking back, that was the last calm week. After that, things moved fast. The night of the accident, the rain came back. It had been clear for a few days. Cold, but dry. The roads had hardened. The snow had retreated up the slopes. Then the ceiling dropped and the clouds leaned in, and it started. That fine, steady drizzle that turns into sheets. You can hear the logging roads from the cabin sometimes. Not like in the city, where cars are constant. Out there, one engine carries for miles. A low hum, rising and falling. That night, I heard a truck. It was late. We were all still up, going over some recordings that had come back with this low, almost speech-like murmur on them. Everyone was bent over the table but me. I kept looking at the window like I could see through it. "Someone's up on the ridge," I said. "How can you tell?" Lena asked. I tipped my head. "Listen." A faint growl, way off. Then, a few seconds later, another, slightly louder. "You get good at distance, living out there." I guessed maybe a mile and a half away on the main spur road. "Hunter?" Robin asked. "Probably," I said. "Or someone checking a gate." "It's pouring," she said. "Who the hell drives up here in this?" "Same kind of idiot who sits in a cabin in it, I guess," I said. We went back to the tape. But I kept hearing it. The engine note. The way it climbed and shifted. Then, all at once, something changed. The sound cut off, then came back in this ragged pattern. Like someone had slammed the brakes and then stomped the pedal again. Even from that distance, even with the noise of the rain, my body reacted. I have heard enough accidents to know that tone, the wrong note in the music, that panic shift. Then it went quiet. No horn, no continued engine sound. Just the rain and our own breathing. "What happened?" Robin asked. "Could have hit a washout," I said. "Or a rockfall. Or..." I didn't finish the sentence. I felt something cold slide down inside my ribs. The young one. He used the roads to cross sometimes. I knew that. We all did. We had seen tracks cutting the ditches, coming up from the lower drainage and heading toward a stand of old growth near that same spur. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds trying to talk myself out of what I was thinking. The truck could have been anywhere. The young one could have been anywhere. The forest is big, the chances. Then I pushed my chair back. "Where are you going?" Suri asked. "Check the road," I said. My voice sounded wrong in my own ears. Flat. "In this," she said, gesturing at the window. The rain streaked down in silver lines. "Someone might be hurt," I said. "If it's nothing, I'll be back in an hour. If it's something, they won't last the night waiting." I grabbed a poncho, a first aid kit, my flashlight, left the pack. No time. Elias stood up. "I'll come. I'm fine," I said. "You don't know what's up there," he said. "You're not going alone." We argued with our eyes for a second. Then I nodded. "Two's better anyway," I said. "If there's a downed tree, we'll need two to move it." We stepped out into the rain. The road takes about 40 minutes on foot in good conditions. That night, with water running in the ruts and mud grabbing at our boots, it felt longer. Our beams cut tunnels through the rain. The trees closed overhead. Every once in a while, I would stop and listen for the engine. Nothing. Just the hiss. Elias walked a little behind and to the side of me, like he always did in low visibility. That way, if one of us went down, the other wouldn't trip over him. Old tracker habit. "You think it's him," he said after a while. He didn't have to say who. "I think someone's driving like they shouldn't on a night when he might be on the road," I said. "That's all I know." He grunted. "Forrest doesn't make deals," he said. "Doesn't care who trusts who." We pushed on. The smell hit me first. That cooked radiator smell you get after a sudden stop. We rounded a bend and saw the truck. It had nosed into the ditch on the right-hand side, angled, front bumper crushed against the bank. Headlights still on, throwing pale cones into the brush. Driver's door half open. Wipers going back and forth, squeaking. No one in the cab. "Hello?" I called. "You okay?" No answer. I moved closer, hand on the butt of the first aid kit like that would help. Elias swept his light into the cab. Empty. No obvious blood on the seat. The keys were still in the ignition, engine coughing but not catching. "Maybe they went to get help," I said. Even as I said it, I knew it didn't fit. "Where?" "Look," Elias said. His beam had shifted to the road in front of the truck. The rain made everything shine. The gravel was slick. There were two deep grooves where the tires had locked up and slid, and in front of them, in the wash of the headlights, was a wide smear of something dark. I stepped closer. The rain tried to erase it, but you could still see. A body-shaped wipe, like something had been hit and then thrown, then dragged off. The drag marks led to the right, toward the trees. The brush there was crushed, broken branches. Something big had gone through fast. I followed the marks, heart pounding in my throat. The beam of my light shook. I tightened my grip until my knuckles hurt. Elias stayed by the road. It was an unspoken deal. One watches the rear, one goes forward. 10 feet in, the smell changed. I saw a shape on the ground ahead of me. At first it was just a darker patch in the dark. Then the details snapped in. He was lying on his side. For a second, my brain refused to put together what I was seeing. Limbs at wrong angles, hair slicked down with rain, one leg twisted under. Then it sorted into a pattern. It was him. You may ask how I knew that. There were other ones out there. I knew. The way you know your own dog lying in the yard. There was something in the proportions. The size. The way the hair lay. The faint mark on one shoulder where I had seen a scar months before. It didn't matter that the light was bad and the rain was coming down. It was him. His chest was crushed. There was no rise and fall. No breath clouds. One arm was stretched out, fingers half closed, digging into the mud. I knelt. I should have been careful, I know. Up close, he looked younger than I had thought. The face was, I don't know how to say this without it sounding wrong. It was not human. The brow hung heavier. The nose was flatter. The mouth was wide. But the way it sat, slack now, the way the lashes clumped with water, the way the hair at the top of his head stuck up in little cowlicks, those details were too familiar. I put my hand on his side. Cold. Too cold. "Come on," I whispered. "Come on, kid. Breathe." There was a wound near his ribs where part of the bumper had caught him. If he had lungs like ours, they were shredded. "Marcus," Elias called from the road. His voice was different. Tight. Is it? Yeah, I said. My voice broke on the word. I don't know how long I knelt there. Time does something strange in moments like that. It gets thick. The rain kept coming down, matting his hair, washing little rivulets of blood into the mud. At some point, I realized I was crying. He was in the road, I said. Not sure if I was talking to Elias or to myself. He was just crossing. He didn't know what headlights mean. The idea of him using the road the way I did, the way deer did, because it was a clear path, because we had taught him it was a place where humans moved but didn't always hurt him, that thought made me nauseous. Behind me, something knocked. Once, hard, I froze. Not from deeper in the forest. From closer. Another knock, this time off to the left. Then one to the right. 3, in a kind of triangle around us. Elias stepped into the trees, light sweeping. We're not alone, he said quietly. I knew that. I could feel eyes on us. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. The air felt thick. It's family, I said. Or the others, he said. Either way, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. I lifted my hand from the kid's side and slowly raised both palms, fingers spread, the way you do when you want to show you're not holding a weapon. We're sorry, I said. My voice shook. I'm sorry. The rain pattered on leaves. Somewhere off to my right, I heard a sound I had never heard from them before. A low, drawn-out sound, almost like a moan. Grief has the same shape in a lot of mouths. Something big moved further back, heavy steps snapping branches. Not charging, not coming closer, staying at a distance, watching. We need to go, Elias murmured. Now. He wasn't afraid of them the way some people are afraid of the boogeyman. He was afraid of what a group of grieving parents could do to 2 men kneeling over their dead kid. He was right. I did not want to leave him there in the brush, half in a puddle, headlights glaring over his body. Every instinct I had screamed to pick him up, to carry him, to do something more than just walk away. We'll come back, I whispered, not sure who I was promising. I swear, we'll come back. I stood slowly, my knees stiff and soaked through. I backed away until I could not see him clearly anymore, just a shape. Then I turned and walked with Elias back to the road. The truck still sat there, engine ticking as it cooled. The wipers squeaked back and forth, smearing rain. Driver? Elias said. We checked the cab more carefully this time. Glove box open. Beer cans on the floor. A rifle in a rack behind the seat. No wallet in sight. Blood on the front bumper, smeared. Not enough to be human. We found boot prints in the mud leading away, down the road, then cutting into the woods on the opposite side. He hit something, saw whatever he thought he saw, and panicked, I said. Got out, saw the ditch, maybe saw the body, maybe not. And then he walked out. Might be halfway to town by now. You want to go after him? Elias asked. It should have been an easy yes. That is what you do in accidents. You check the driver. You make sure they aren't bleeding in a ditch somewhere. I pictured some guy, drunk, shaken, stumbling into his buddy's house hours ago, telling a story about hitting a bear. I pictured going after him and leaving the kid alone in the woods, with his family watching us from the dark. No, I said. It felt like a confession even then. He's not our problem. Who is? Elias said. You know the answer. When we walked back into the cabin, everyone knew something was wrong. You don't have to say anything. It's in the way you open the door, the way your shoulders sit. Robin was on her feet before I got my poncho off. Where is he? She asked. Is he okay? Hunter left his truck in a ditch, Elias said. Walked out. We didn't find him. She looked at me, not satisfied with that. And, she said. My throat closed. I could still feel the cold of the kid's skin on my hand. And we found him, I said. The juvenile. The room went very quiet. Even the stove sounded too loud. No, Robin whispered. She shook her head, like she could reject reality by moving it away. No, he wouldn't be on the road. He stays off the road. He's learning from us, Lena said under her breath, like she was talking to her notes. He's copying our paths. How bad? Suri asked. Bad enough, I said. There was nothing to do. Her face crumpled for a second. Then she straightened, like someone flipping a switch. We need to go, she said. We need to bring the body back. We need to document. No, I said. Marcus, no, I said again, louder. We are not bringing him in here. We are not cutting him open on this table. We are not taking pictures to show to people who will never see him as anything but a freak specimen. That's not what She started. You wanted tissue, I said. Samples. Sequencing. Congratulations. We got what we needed. We know he exists. We know his people exist. We know they're close to us. Is that not enough? Enough for what? Lena snapped. Her voice shook in a way I'd never heard. Enough to soothe your conscience? Do you know what we could prove if we brought him in? Do you understand that we have been chasing shadows for months, for years, for decades in my case, and now we have a dead child, I said. We have a dead child. The word hung there, child. No one had said it out loud yet. Robin sat down hard on a chair. Her hands went to her mouth. Don't call it that, Lena said, but there was no weight behind it. What else would you call him? I said. He wasn't a mouse. He wasn't a specimen. He had a family out there knocking at us while we knelt over him like grave robbers. I didn't want to dissect him, Suri said softly. I wanted to make sure he didn't die for nothing. Everything hurt. That's what we tell ourselves, I said. That we're doing it for knowledge, for science, for the greater good. Tell me how, in any possible future, this doesn't end with more of them dying. More of them on tables. More of them shot in the name of study or fear or money. No one answered. Because there wasn't one. At some point, without deciding, the conversation shifted from, what do we do, to what can we live with? It was Elias who said it first. We dig, he said. Everyone turned to look at him. We put him in the ground, he said, like we would one of our own. We don't take pieces, we don't take pictures. We remember. That's it. That's not science, Lena said, but her voice had gone small. No, he said, it's not. It's mercy. We went back as a group that afternoon while there was still enough light. The truck was still there, but the headlights had died. The engine was cold. The blood smear on the bumper had thinned under the rain. The drag marks were harder to see. The forest does its best to erase. But we knew where to look. The smell guided us the rest of the way. He was where we had left him. On his side, a little more mud splashed up over his legs. The rain had cleaned some of the blood away, but not all. No one spoke for a long time. Suri knelt near his head and touched his hair gently just for a second, like she was checking for a pulse she knew would not be there. I'm sorry, she whispered. Robin stood with her arms crossed around herself, eyes red. He used to follow me, she said. I heard him laughing once, not like us. But it was a happy sound, I thought. She didn't finish. Lena stood back a few feet. I could see the war in her face. The part of her that had chased this her whole life. The part that saw the data points, the once-in-a-species chance. The other part that saw something on the ground that had hands and a face and hair like a messy boy. He is already dead, she said quietly. Taking a small sample would not. He's not a lab rat, Elias said. He's someone's son. The word hit all of us like a physical thing. I did not want to be the one to decide. I was the one with the land, the one who had led them in, but I did not want that weight. I looked at each of them. We do this together, I said. No one gets to blame anyone else later. We voted. It wasn't formal. No hands raised. Just a slow, ugly process of each of us saying what we could live with. In the end, it was 4 against 1. Lena wanted to take something, anything. A hair, a bit of skin, a vial of blood. She argued until her voice shook and her words tangled. We understood. We did. But we had to look at him while she talked. Suri changed her mind midway through. At first she was with Lena, then she wasn't. I watched the happen in her eyes. She looked at his hand, at the way the fingers still curled like they had been reaching for something when the truck hit. Maybe for the light. Maybe for the edge of the road. Maybe for us. I can't do it, she said. Not like this. Fine, Lena said. Tears were running down her face now too. Then he dies twice. Once out here, once in every textbook where his whole line is still myth. Maybe that's better for them, I said. Maybe not for us, she shot back. Maybe not for the kids who will grow up thinking they're alone when they're not. It was the ugliest argument I have ever been in. Not because of yelling. Because everyone was right and everyone was wrong at the same time. In the end, mercy won. We dug. Elias and I broke the ground with shovels while the others cleared brush. The soil was thick with roots, heavy with water. Every scoop felt like too little. The hole never looked deep enough. The kid was heavier than I expected, nothing but bone and muscle. We wrapped him in a tarp from the truck, carefully, like we were trying not to hurt him more. It felt wrong and necessary at the same time. Before we lowered him in, I knelt and put my hand on the tarp where his chest would be. "You didn't deserve this," I said. "We failed you." I don't know who I meant by we, humans in general, me specifically. The driver, all of us. Someone knocked, far back in the trees. Once, then twice, overlapping. Not angry, not exactly, but not random either. A rhythm like a heartbeat. I like to think they saw what we were doing, that they understood, in whatever way they can, that we were not leaving him for scavengers, that we were trying, clumsy as we were, to give him something like what they would have given him. We covered the tarp with earth. The sound of the dirt hitting him made my stomach flip. By the time the hole was filled, all of us were soaked through. Mud up our sleeves, under our nails. We did not mark the grave with a cross or a stone. That wasn't our right. Elias took 3 rocks from the road and stacked them carefully on a stump nearby in a pattern I'd seen before, in places where we had found sign. A little marker in their language, not ours. As we walked away, I felt eyes on my back the whole time. No one spoke on the walk to the cabin. We sat around the table that night, mud still drying in cracks on our hands, and decided to kill our own work. There was no ceremony to it, no speeches, just tired people, wrecked people, trying to limit the damage. "We erase as much as we can," I said. "We take what we can carry, no raw samples, no casts, no photos, notes only. Things that could be dismissed later if they have to be. You want to pretend this never happened," Lena said. "Just go home and teach survival classes like this was a 6-month camping trip." "I want them to survive," I said. "That's all." "What about us?" Robin asked quietly. "What about surviving this, in here?" She tapped her chest. "We live with it," I said. "We don't talk. We don't write. We don't go on shows or conferences or whatever the hell. We let the world keep its jokes and its grainy photos. We let them stay ghosts." It felt like pushing a boulder back up a hill and letting it crush you instead of the village. Overly dramatic maybe, but that's how it felt in that moment. We argued more. Of course we did. There is no version of this where everyone nods and says, "Okay," right away. In the end, though, we made a pact. We took the tapes that had the clearest vocalizations, the sharpest knocks, and we recorded over them with rain. We burned the hair samples we hadn't sent out yet. We broke the casts and buried the pieces under the woodpile. It hurt to do it. Physically almost. Like tearing out stitches. We each kept something though, human nature. A notebook with our scribbles. A copy of one of the lab reports. A memory you can't erase. Someday, Lena said before she left, someone is going to get proof. And they're going to do exactly what you're afraid of, just so you understand. Us doing this doesn't stop that, it just means we won't be the ones who get the call. "I know," I said. "You're okay with that?" she asked. "No," I said. "I'm just more okay with it than the alternative." She looked at me for a long time. "I hope you're right," she said. "For their sake. And for ours." Then she walked out of the cabin and into her life, wherever it went after that. We didn't all keep in touch. For a while we called now and then, sent a postcard, then less, then not at all. Trauma does that. Either it glues you together or it blows you in opposite directions. We got the second kind. People ask me why I'm talking now. No one's actually asked me that on camera yet, but I can hear the question in your silence. Part of it is age. I am not the guy who hiked those ridges anymore. Part of it is what's happened since. There are more people in those woods now than there were in '98. More hikers, more researchers with YouTube channels, more guns with scopes, drones, thermal cameras, all the toys. Every now and then I'll see a clip online. Some shaky video of a dark shape stepping behind a tree. Some audio of a howl that might be faked. People in the comments say the same things they always have. Hoax, bear, crazy. And I think about that kid. I think about him standing in the little patch of snow, crunching into an apple with juice on his chin, watching my face with those reflective eyes. I think about how he trusted the space between us enough to step into it, We taught him roads weren't always deadly. We taught him objects left by humans sometimes meant food, sometimes meant toys. We taught him to see us not just as threats, but as possible, something else. Curiosities, neighbors. And then one of us hit him with a truck. The driver probably went home and told himself it was a deer. He probably still tells that story in bars. How he hit something big out on the logging road once, in a storm, scared the hell out of him. Probably laughs about how jumpy he was. He never saw what we put in the ground. He never stood next to the hole with mud drying on his hands, feeling like he had helped kill a miracle. We did. That's the truth. For all the data we had, for all the arguments and lab reports and nights without sleep, what I'm left with is not certainty. It's a handful of images and sounds that will not go away.